Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to be here today to talk about a practical, evidence-based approach to unlocking lasting cultural transformation, one deliberate action at a time. On this first slide, we see the core idea. To change company culture, you want to start with one high-impact behavior. Over the course of this presentation, we'll explore how focusing on specific actions can make a real difference. We'll look at strategies, examples, and steps you can take to create meaningful change in your organization. So, let's get started. Let's talk about why culture tends to stay stubbornly static, even when we invest a lot of time, money, and energy into change programs. Despite all these efforts, culture often doesn't shift as quickly or as deeply as we'd like. The key point here is that under stress, ambiguity, or performance pressure, these are the moments when people tend to revert to their old habits. It's like muscle memory. No matter how compelling the messaging or how well-designed the initiative, when it really counts, old behaviors tend to reemerge. This brings us to what I call the pressure problem. Many organizations rely heavily on value statements, training sessions, and polished communication campaigns. These tools are great for informing and inspiring, but they rarely lead to real behavior change. They often fall short because they focus on what people know or believe, rather than what they actually do when it matters most. So, why does culture change often fail? It's because these initiatives don't address the deeper, behavioral side of things. Changing culture requires more than just words or training. It requires a fundamental shift in how people act in real, high-pressure situations. Lasting culture change really depends on focusing on actual, observable behaviors. It's not enough to just reframe people's mindsets or update their belief systems. If we want real change, we need to see people acting differently. This slide emphasizes that shifting actions, not just beliefs, is key. When stress, ambiguity, or high-stakes decisions come into play, people often drift from the values they say they hold. That's when the true culture underneath the surface starts to show itself. It's important to recognize that knowing what the right thing to do is and actually doing it are two different things. There's often a gap between our intentions and our actions, and that gap is where culture change tends to break down. Finally, I want to highlight the idea of the behavior gap, the difference between what people believe and how they actually act. Closing this gap is essential for creating a genuine and lasting cultural transformation. Let's talk about the power of consistent transparency in leadership. When a leader openly shares their decisions and admits mistakes, it creates a foundation of trust. And that trust doesn't stay isolated. It spreads across the entire organization over time. Now, a real-world example of this is when leaders model those behaviors, being honest, transparent, and vulnerable. It reshapes the norms within the company, transforming how people interact daily and how decisions are made. This leads us to the ripple effects, how one pivotal behavior can act as a catalyst for broader cultural change. It's like the first domino falling, setting everything else in motion. And that's the core idea here. Sometimes, just one high-impact behavior, one intentional action, can have a powerful influence on the entire culture. It's a reminder that small, consistent actions by leaders can create lasting, organization-wide shifts. Let's look at this case study to see how More Than Now approached culture change. They didn't try to tackle everything at once. Instead, they worked with multiple organizations to focus on embedding just one critical behavior at a time. This targeted approach led to real, measurable shifts in culture, something broad programs often struggle to achieve. Behavioral design practices are key here. They help us identify which actions actually carry the most weight in shaping culture. Once identified, these actions can be reinforced through adjustments in the environment, systems, and social cues, making the desired behaviors more natural and automatic. Decades of research support this approach. It shows us that focusing on specific, well-designed actions consistently outperforms broad messaging. When organizations hone in on clear, targeted behaviors, lasting change becomes much more attainable. So, in essence, This evidence from behavioral science confirms that strategic, focused interventions, rather than vague messages, are what drive sustainable cultural transformation. The right high-impact behavior is really about finding that sweet spot where your current culture meets your desired future state. It's not just an abstract idea. It's something you can observe, repeat, and that has enough power to actually influence how others behave around it. What's crucial here is choosing actions that are visible and consistent, so they can create a ripple effect throughout the organization. These are the behaviors that, when practiced regularly, shift the way people think and act. To do that effectively, you need to prioritize and activate specific behaviors, those that have a clear, observable impact and align with your goals. Next, you want to find behaviors that generate ripples, meaning those small actions or interactions that can influence larger patterns over time. This involves charting out ideas, practices, interactions, and even identities that support this change. Finally, mapping your culture is about creating a practical framework. It helps you identify which behaviors will have the most high impact, guiding you to focus your efforts where they will truly make a difference. This way, you're not just changing for change's sake, you're strategically shaping your culture towards that desired future. Now, let's look at how to effectively overcome barriers to behavior change. First, continuous social reinforcement and regular feedback are essential. They create the right environment where new behaviors can not only take hold, but also spread throughout the organization. This ongoing support helps make the change stick. Next, it's crucial to build feedback loops. Leadership actions and organizational policies need to visibly support the new behavior. When there's a disconnect, when actions don't match words, it sends mixed signals that can kill momentum and undermine efforts. Finally, we have to acknowledge the hidden resistance that's often at play. Power dynamics and identity threats can quietly sabotage change. The key here is to name these issues openly and honestly. By doing so, we can diffuse their influence and prevent them from derailing progress. So, in summary, creating an environment of ongoing reinforcement, aligning leadership and policies, and openly addressing resistance are all vital steps to make lasting behavior change possible. Research from Harvard Business Impact confirms that when leaders actively model the target behaviors, organizations are much more likely to achieve successful transformation. It's not just about training people on skills, it's about actually demonstrating those behaviors daily. That's why behavior-centered development is so crucial. Leaders need to embody the behaviors they want to see, consistently, every day, in every situation. Visibility is key here because it's what makes the behavior legitimate and credible in the eyes of others. When leaders are visibly practicing these behaviors, it reinforces their importance and encourages others to follow suit. Ultimately, leadership's role in modeling behavior isn't just about setting an example. It's about creating a culture where these behaviors become part of the daily fabric of the organization. Let's talk about the importance of celebrating the behavior publicly. When we make these positive actions visible, we show that they are valued and worth repeating. Recognition is powerful because it encourages others to follow suit and helps embed these behaviors into our daily routines. Rewarding and recognizing good behavior goes beyond just saying, "Good job." It involves reinforcing these actions through our processes, performance frameworks, and everyday workflows. When these behaviors are integrated into how we operate, they become part of the organizational fabric. But remember, culture change isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing journey. It requires continuous effort and intentional embedding into every part of the organization. A single well-chosen behavior can create a tipping point when it starts to feel natural, and new norms begin to emerge quietly but powerfully across teams and levels. Ultimately, shifting from just one behavior to lasting culture change is about consistency and patience. It's about turning small, intentional acts into the new standard, shaping a culture that truly reflects our values and aspirations. All right, as we wrap up, let's focus on how to sustain this momentum. Tracking progress with clear signals is essential, Make sure your team knows what success looks like and celebrate those wins loudly. Recognizing achievements openly helps reinforce the right behaviors and keeps everyone motivated. Remember, embedding these behaviors into your systems and rewards is key to building unstoppable momentum over time. Moving on, it's also crucial to equip your leaders to model the desired behavior visibly and consistently. When leaders demonstrate these behaviors daily, it sets a powerful example for the entire organization. Creating peer accountability is just as important. Encouraging teams to reinforce these behaviors among themselves ensures that the culture is reinforced from every angle. Finally, the most impactful step is identifying that one action, one behavior, that can truly unlock your culture's potential. It should be observable, repeatable, and capable of creating ripple effects across the organization. By focusing on this single, high-impact behavior, you set a clear, achievable path forward. So, your next step is to choose and champion that high-impact behavior. Lead by example, embed it into your systems, and watch how it transforms your culture from the inside out.